Hey guys, insight number 3. This is a good one and it might go a bit longer because I love this topic. So this is talking about seers. So now that Ammon and Limhi, they've connected, they've had a good discussion about stuff and they're feeling really good, Limhi tells them about a group that he sent up that got lost, but lost for a very good reason because they found something very valuable. And you think about the journeys that you think you got lost on. Actually, it was Christ sending you exactly where you needed to go for a very good purpose. And you come back feeling like, I failed. I didn't do what, the whole journey was for. And yet, you actually did. And that's part of divine design. And this was a divine detour. But they came into this land, obviously shot way past Zarahemla and ended up where the Jaredites were. And that's how we get those plates. So they found, it says in verse 8, that they travelled laying among many waters. So they went quite high up. They had bones of men. That was just like this numerous host, would have been as big as Israel. And Israel then was huge. Like they knew of the size of that, again from generational speak, as to how Israel was described and how big it was. One of the major cities and places of the day. So huge, a whole lot of people. And they said they had a testimony that they were, that to bring back stuff that they brought back evidence. And one of the things they brought back was 24 gold plates, which were full of engraving. They're pure gold. So this would have been like 24 karat gold. This is soft and easy to write in. So they've scratched in, like you can scratch into 24 karat gold if you've got a sharp enough instrument. Whereas the brass plates, old Nephi there was hammering those out hard. Longer lasting, probably better surviving than gold, but these are pure gold. So these guys were pretty civilized to be able to have pure gold plates. And they also brought back breastplates that were large, so we knew that these people were bigger, like quite big. And they were brass and copper and in perfect condition. So this was a civilized people. And they're like, where'd they come from? Like, what the heck, So they brought all the stuff down and he's telling Ammon here that, but we don't know what the language says. We can't read it and we don't know anyone that can translate it. And he says in verse 12 here to Ammon, and I say unto thee again, knowest thou of anyone that can translate? For I am desirous that these records should be translated into our language, for perhaps they will give us a knowledge of a remnant of the people who have been destroyed, from whence these records came, or perhaps they will give us a knowledge of this very people who have been destroyed, and I am desirous to know the cause of their destruction. He's desiring to know what happened to learn from it. Because you remember, he's in this situation where he's oppressed, his people are getting killed. If they try and leave, they could get wiped out. And he's like, but actually, I've kept this secret from the Lamanites, stop telling them that I got this. But I want to know what's on here because I might be able to learn something from it. And that's exactly what we have scriptures for today. What was on here that we needed to learn? And he recognized this. King Limhi recognized this in these plates. He's like, there's something on here that we need to know. And not just us, but others. What a dude, right? Love that guy. So happy that he did this. But Ammon said unto him, I can assuredly tell thee, this is verse 13, O king, of a man that can translate the records, for he has wherewith that he can look and translate all records that are of ancient date, and it is a gift from God. And he uses these things called interpreters, which you look down as the Urim and Thummim, and I don't know exactly, and you might, but are they the same Urim and Thummim that Joseph Smith had to see what he saw as a seer? And then you start thinking, well, what is a seer? A seer is literally a seer. But look at what it is. It's set apart as a seer. They're a prophet. So if he's talking about the king that can do this, then likely the king's a prophet. If he's got that, then he's probably got some priesthood of some description. Which, if that's still around, that's fantastic. Because it's not mentioned a whole lot, but we can read into that a little. Like, not too deeply. Like, don't deep dive into something that's not there. But it hints at it, and that is cool. And these are, mistakes that turn into needed miracles. This was so cool. So there. And then over to 19, he explains, Ammon goes on to explain what a seer is. what they can do and how marvelous it is that they're a revelator, they're a prophet, they're given this gift from God. They see things past and things to come. Secret things get manifested unto them. They see things that are not known. They work mighty miracles of great benefit, and they do things for a purpose. Now that's all listed in there, and I think that's fantastic. It's the gift given of God to see things He needs you to see, to guide and teach. And how have our modern seers been of benefit to you? And do you have a testimony of modern seers? It's our prophets, our First Presidency and Quorum of the 12. And what messages from this last conference from them specifically inspired you? Because while 70s give great talks and have great information, and they are definitely spirit-led and inspired, don't ever get me wrong that they're not there. They're great, and I've met some of the 70s that have spoken at conference, and I know they're men of God, and I know they were definitely inspired. I know it. I've talked to them, and they've changed their talks last minute. I know that. But from our First Presidency and Quorum of the 12, those are the men that see around corners, and that's why I love this book, which I grabbed last year when I was in the States. And I highly recommend this if you have not read this, or if you have access to someone who has it, grab it and read it. It's a short read, but it's incredible. Sherry Duran here, she describes this seers as prophets, seers, and revelators have but one motive: to teach and testify the gospel of Jesus Christ is indeed once again on the earth, that it is filled with godly power, and that it will help all who listen find and stay on a covenant path designed to eventually return us to the presence of our Heavenly Father. So one of the reasons they have this seer power is to move forward the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's not a magic cosmic machine they look into to see, who's going to marry who, what job you're going to have in the future. That is personal revelation. That is a whole different thing. Then there's revelation that they have given specifically. That is different again. So to give you an idea of this, I'm going to read a snippet from a book. So this will take a little longer, but I promise you it's well worth it, so stay around. So she says here, this is in chapter 4, which is questions about prophets, like who exactly are prophets, seers, and revelators, and how does that work? And she gives a great example. President Hinckley she talks about, but she says the senior apostle or president of the church, currently President Nelson, is the only person who can speak for the Lord in everything. But even the senior apostle does not act alone. He has 2 counselors and 12 apostles to assist him, each ordained as a prophet, seer, and revelator. The Lord controls who is ordained an apostle. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you. He told the original 12 this. There's no electioneering or campaigning. Only the president of the church is authorized to appoint a new apostle, and he does so as the Lord directs him. The Lord then controls through life and death which apostles live long enough to become the senior apostle. An example from recent church history is interesting to consider. Now this account of it, I was not quite aware of it. I was alive at the time, but I was like 7, 8. So I didn't really know what was going on with the First Presidency, but this made me have so much more respect for President Hinckley. I mean, I love the man anyway. I think he was brilliant. He was incredibly charismatic and made great decisions around smaller temples so that there could be more of them. I know that he got revelations that led us in places that are just incredible. But this gives you that prophets see around corners, and that their prophet is absolutely directed exactly, even if they don't know why, which we often don't, as to why to do something. So this is how this happened. Excuse me. Now remember, she works with these men as like secretary and support crew kind of thing. So she's there. In January 1983, Elder LeGrand Richards passed away, leaving a vacancy in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. At the time, President Spencer W. Kimball's health was frail, his memory spotty, and his ability to communicate inconsistent. Because of his waning health, the vacancy in the 12 was not filled in either the April or the October 1983 General Conference. Then in January 1984, Elder Marky Peterson died, creating a second open chair in the 12. Unfortunately, President Kimball's health had only deteriorated. Those close to the situation, including Dr. Russell M. Nelson, then President Kimball's heart surgeon, knew the president was in no condition to extend apostolic calls, because the kind of prayer that you have to get that kind of revelation is deep, right? However, the Lord is able to do his own work. For months, President Gordon B. Hinckley, who was the only healthy member of the first presidency at that time, had left instructions with President Kimball's caregivers to call him immediately, regardless of the hour, if President Kimball's mind ever cleared. Month after month passed with no call. Imagine the weight on President Hinckley. And they're short 2 people. Haven't we all felt that? And all our callings, right? The weight of it, and we're short people, and this need to happen, and oh my gosh, hard. Okay, but then at approximately 2:30 a.m. on the Wednesday morning prior to April 1984 General Conference, the phone rang at President Hinckley's home. President Kimball was alert. Made me cry. President Hinckley rushed to President Kimball's suite in the Hotel Utah in downtown Salt Lake City, where the issue of vacancies of the 12 was discussed. President Kimball said simply, "Call Nelson and Oaks in that order." After the 2 new apostles were presented for the sustaining vote that weekend in General Conference, President Hinckley assured the church that these calls had been issued at President Kimball's direction. While President Kimball is unable to stand at this pulpit, he said, he has given his authorization to do that which has been done. We would not have proceeded without this. One example of the significance of President Kimball's instructions during those rare moments of clarity became apparent 36 years later, in the year 2020, when a global pandemic suddenly rocked the earth. The president of the church was Russell M. Nelson, a man who had become a globally renowned physician during his professional career. Was that just an interesting coincidence? Or did the Lord call a man to the quorum of the 12 at exactly the right time and advance him through the 12 so that he was the senior apostle when a worldwide scourge affected everything in the church, from Sunday meetings to missionary work? Prophets see around corners. That's what a seer does. That alone, I had no idea of that happening. I had some remembrance of both Nelson and Oaks being called, because I was like, oh, they called new people. And I remember thinking, how does that work? But I didn't think much more of it at the time. But to read that, and I read that last year when I got the book, and oh my gosh, did I cry so much for President Hinckley. I cried knowing, because I knew when the pandemic hit that President Nelson was there for that reason. But to think that the Lord knew way back then to call him then in that order for those specific reasons, and that certain ones would die along the way and go, and I miss those men. Some of them are incredible. I'm going to miss Elder Holland too. A whole lot of them. I don't even want to think about it because they just mean so much to me. But that it engineered that way, that's not coincidence. That is divine design. And how much that impacted how we survived as members, who we look to for leadership. The whole thing. They put church and home already in place. We were allowed to have sacrament at home. Everything was just there. It was ready to go. How did they know that? There is no way other than that Jesus told them through their seership. So there you go. That's my testimony of that. And I know this went over, but this is something I'm really passionate about. I have a huge testimony of it. So if you don't have a testimony of this, ask. Ask for it. Ask to know that our first presidency and quorum of the 12 are seers. If you know they're prophets and revelators, great. But that's different than a seer. Ask. It's different than revelation. Ask. This is something else. And what messages from this last conference, from those gentlemen, those wonderful men, inspired you? Because not everything's going to speak to you, but there's something in there that was meant for you. So, what was that? Anyway, that's enough of me getting emotional about that. So, we'll head over to chapter 9, and I'll see you there.